Digital nomadism promises a life of perfection, right? Adventure, traveling around wherever you want to, and working from paradise. But is it all that it's cracked up to be? Well, in recent years, we've seen an uptick in the amount of people that are actually going and traveling the world as digital nomads. These people are getting remote positions, often from multiple companies or just freelancing on their laptops. They are able to sustain themselves and fund their adventures and travels solely from the work they do online. And because of this, they've been able to work anywhere they want. They can travel to any country they want to, they can work however many hours it takes for them, and they have more flexibility and freedom when it comes to actually traveling around the world. This sounds perfect, right? I mean, a way to travel around the world wherever you want without ever having to be bogged down by a typical 9-to-5 job or being locked into the hours of a single location. Well, it's not as perfect as you think it is. But before we jump into the video, hi, my name is Josh Mountain. I'm a software engineer, entrepreneur, and YouTuber, and I love making videos about technology and sharing what's going on in my world, whether it's the startup I'm currently working on or the tech that I'm finding interesting. But today's video, we're gonna be talking about digital nomadism, the idea that you can travel anywhere in the world and work and get paid to essentially fund your travel. Now, for those of you who aren't quite familiar with the concept of digital nomadism, let me quickly break it down for you. Digital nomadism is essentially working completely remotely from wherever you happen to find yourself, making money from your laptop, whether that be creative work, software engineering, or really anything that you can do from a computer. Traditionally, many people who choose to become digital nomads fly from their country of origin, which typically has a much higher cost of living, to somewhere with a much lower cost of living. They're able to get paid at the same rates that they were back in their home country, but are able to put that money much further in the place that they currently find themselves. Essentially, if you're somebody who's moving from North America to, say, somewhere in Southeast Asia, like Thailand, typically you would be working for much more than what is traditionally found in places in Thailand. So when you're making Canadian or US dollars and spending it in Thai baht, well, you're gonna be able to put your money much further there. And this is what's so appealing for digital nomads. People can get paid in the traditional origin currency that they get paid in, and they can put it much further in a country that allows them to do so. The life of a digital nomad promises adventure, freedom, and a traditional flexibility that isn't quite offered in most 9-to-5 jobs that aren't remote and are in their home country. If you've been on social media for a while, you would have known that there are tons of social media influencers advertising this lifestyle, talking about how they're able to travel to, 10 or 15 countries a year solely working from their laptops, funding all of their adventures just from the online work. And the thing with social media is, like every other post in social media, the glamorous side of this profession is typically what's highlighted the most. Now, although I talk about the glamorous side of social media, statistically, there have been a significant number of digital nomads that have left their home country and traveled to somewhere with a much lower cost of living while still getting paid in their home country's currency, able to put their work much further, working completely from their laptop. So this profession sounds great. I mean, you can travel the world, go wherever you want, and get paid from your laptop in your home currency and put that much further at wherever you happen to find yourself. So what's the catch? Unfortunately, there are a few. Now, don't get me wrong, the lifestyle of a digital nomad, if you can successfully pull it off, is certainly something that appeals to many people. People want to work, maybe a couple hours a week getting paid in US dollars, but have their currency go so much further in the country that they happen to be finding themselves. But there's a few things that you actually need to have in place to actually make sure that this works properly. Otherwise, you're gonna be doing this illegally, and you might not have the flexibility and free time that you would typically think as shown on social media. The first thing, many of the digital nomads that you see online aren't really digital nomads in the traditional sense. When many people think digital nomad, they think, oh, they are somebody who works from their laptop, doing some sort of profession, whether it be at an actual position or freelance, and they get paid to do so. Well, for most people that you see online, these people aren't the traditional digital nomad where they're getting paid to work at a job. They are more so travel influencers, meaning that the main sources of their income come from the ad revenue from YouTube videos, sponsorships, things that are related to them talking about their travels and displaying that online, and maybe some blog posts, maybe some products, whatever they actually have, but it's more so to do with their brand. So when you think about it that way, in the traditional sense, those people aren't typically digital nomads. They are rather, travel influencer entrepreneurs, which if you consider that a digital nomad, being the fact that you have the ability to go travel anywhere you want while still getting paid, absolutely, you can consider that. With that being said though, it's not as easy for the everyday average person to simply pack a backpack, fly to a different country, and all of a sudden be getting paid more than you would have to spend there and enjoying a much better way of life. Unless you're a digital travel influencer who has a sizable amount of followers and have a substantial amount of revenue coming in, most digital nomads face financial insecurity. And most of the time, this is due to an inconsistent income. I mean, many of the people who are choosing to travel abroad are acting, in fact, as entrepreneurs. They are acting as freelancers. They are only going from job to job to job. So although they may be enjoying a much lower cost of living there, they still have to pull in income, or in some cases for certain countries, if they are getting on a working visa, they have to prove that they have a substantial amount of income that they are pulling in to qualify for the proper visa to be there, working there. Like for example, if I wanted to just say, pack my bags today and fly to Thailand and start running this YouTube channel and doing my software services and doing all those things, I couldn't just work there remotely unless I had the proper visas. And oftentimes for many of these countries, although they do offer shorter term, let's say less than a year visas, in the long term, it's not going to be as easy to do that. So when it comes to being a digital nomad, it's not as easy as simply packing your stuff, flying there and doing it. You have to make sure that you have the proper regulations, because if you just go there on a tourist visa and start working, well, obviously you're breaking the law and you could get deported or even banned from the country altogether. Because obviously if you just have a tourist visa and you pack your bags, fly there and just start working for say 6 months and getting a substantial amount of income working there, well, obviously, you're not going to be doing it legally. In addition to that, when people fly to countries all around the world, they are typically incurring higher expenses because they are essentially being there as a tourist. Unless you're going to actually go there and try and adopt that regular way of life, for most people, it's going to be much more expensive than just living where you are. Unless, of course, you are living in somewhere that has a significantly lower cost of living and you're getting paid more money than you would typically be getting paid at that country. That being said, even if you do have those lower expenses, you have to deal with constant travel, accommodations, healthcare. You are covering everything yourself because you are seen as just that. You're somebody who's visiting. You're somebody who's there on a worker's visa. And again, assuming you're on a worker's visa, because if you weren't, that would be probably pretty illegal. The next thing is, many people think that being a digital nomad means you can simply fly to somewhere that's cheaper, work 1 hour a day, maybe do a couple points or whatever, and then you've got the free time. You could go to the beaches, you could go do the expensive trips, and you could do all these things that you would see and do as a tourist. But for most people, if they're going to be living somewhere long-term as a digital nomad, well, they have to have some sort of work-life balance. But given the fact that you are essentially working as an entrepreneur for yourself, you are constantly going to have to worry about where the next paycheck is going to come from or where the next project is going to be. In this case, this can offer significant downsides because you're going to be focusing less on the leisure side of things, going to the beaches and enjoying the time you're there, and more so on making sure that you can sustain that lifestyle. Unless, of course, you're going with a massive chunk of cash to begin with, which in that case, you aren't really a digital nomad, you're just a tourist who's there doing a little bit of work on the side. And again, time zones are a thing. So if you're somebody who's working in Thailand and say you have clients primarily based in Canada or the US or the UK, you're gonna have to deal with the barrier of those time zone differences and can expect people to not get back to you for several hours, or maybe you don't get back to them for several hours, which could impede the workflow that you're currently trying to establish. Adding on to that, in 2024, many people's mental health is already at an all-time low, and the idea that you're constantly moving around makes it pretty difficult to establish long-term connections and friendships, and that can lead to anxiety, loneliness, all of the above. If you're going to actually put yourself down in one particular place, well, then you're not really becoming a digital nomad. You're just moving somewhere for an extended period of time, which of course you can absolutely do. Many people go do that. They go fly to a different country and live for a couple of years. But in that case, you're not going to be actually, taking on the beaches and doing all the touristy things. Again, you're more so moving there as a temporary resident with the intention of working, which is a completely different idea than many people have when they fly to a different country with the assumption that, oh, I'm going to be a digital nomad. I'm going to have beach days. I'm going to be going to fancy restaurants. There's a massive difference between somebody who goes abroad because they want to be a quote unquote digital nomad and just go to the beaches all day, go to all the touristy stuff, eat really expensive food, and somebody who actually flies somewhere with the intention of working there and becoming and pretty much assimilating into that culture and country for the long term, or maybe even for the short term if it happens to be 6 months to a year. For many people who are going to be constantly traveling around a lot, mental health issues like anxiety and loneliness are going to be common. You can't put down those established roots like somebody who would be staying in that country for a longer term would be. Now, bringing it back to the visa issue, for example, if I wanted to go and be a digital nomad in another country and I wanted to get a working visa, there are certain countries that I absolutely could go to and it would be very, very easy for me to get a work visa there. That being said, I probably wouldn't be having the lower cost of living while I'm working there that many people online seem to show. Now, for me, if I go to those countries that I can easily get a visa, I'm going to be enjoying pretty much the same cost of living, if not higher cost of living, because I'm going to be living there essentially as a tourist while I am being a digital nomad. And the idea that I can just simply snap my fingers, get a working visa for one of these countries where it's a much lower cost of living is honestly laughable. There are many challenges, especially depending on the country of origin that you're coming from, on getting specific working visas or extended stays. Now, the point of this video is obviously not to bash on traveling. I think traveling is a great way to expand your horizons, meet new people, and really, give yourself a much better experience seeing what the rest of the world is like. Don't want to bash on travel at all, but the goal of this video is to pull back the curtain on what many of the digital nomad influencers online won't tell you. The stressful sides of things, being lonely when you're traveling especially if you're by yourself, going and traveling somewhere completely by yourself, can do a number on your mental health, especially if you don't have the financials completely figured out. When it comes to traveling, there are pros and cons to either side. Of course, the pros being you can actually go and see new places. The cons being, of course, loneliness and making sure that you're financially stable. But if you can solve those cons, if you can figure out a way to make sure that you are set up in a country with the proper visas, getting paid in US dollars, enjoying a lower cost of living, power to you. That is amazing. And I don't want to shy people away or scare people off rather from doing that and having those adventures. This being said, I think many people think it's very easy to just simply snap their fingers, get a visa, fly somewhere and start working for a year and have it be all perfect, when in reality, it's not that simple. Now, what motivated me to make this video more than anything is the fact that last October, I actually had the opportunity to go to Italy. Now, it wasn't to become a digital nomad, rather it was a vacation, but the point was I wanted to try out and see what, for example, if I was imagining my life as a digital nomad, what would that actually look like? And when my friends and I were in the city of Bologna, we actually met somebody who was from the same city as me, who was doing just that, being a digital nomad. He was working completely remotely, traveling around from Amsterdam, Berlin, and now finding himself in Bologna, Italy. And what piqued my curiosity about this is, of course, at night after work, he had free time. But when I woke up in the morning, this guy who we had just met and who was from the same city as me, he was working. We were all out to go do our touristy stuff, right? But he was working. Because being a digital nomad isn't just all the glitz and glamour of going and traveling around and being a tourist and doing touristy things. It's working. You are still working to sustain yourself. You do get the option to have that free time and those new experiences, but it isn't the same thing as just being a tourist with unlimited money, because obviously you have to sustain yourself somehow. But enough of the doom and gloom. Let's talk about the ways that you could solve some of those problems if you do want to go down the path of being a digital nomad. The first thing, of course, is actually building a financial safety net, making sure that in the event that your digital nomad endeavor all goes wrong, well, you have finances to fall back on. Some sort of cash cushion that you can comfortably land on if it doesn't work out the way that you intend. Because it's going to be much easier to go to a country abroad and be working there, assuming, again, you've got the visa situation figured out, if you've got a cash safety net. Because it means that you could sample out the digital nomad lifestyle without the pressure of immediately having to make money from the second you land there. In addition to that, maintaining your mental health, establishing a strong support network is paramount. And that doesn't just mean the people that you're going to actually meet there, but it also means staying connected with the friends and family you have at home, regular video calls, making sure that you can successfully manage the isolation that you're going to experience from being on your own. Or needing to be a social butterfly and talk to every single person you meet, well, that might actually get you pretty far if you're going abroad. But again, keep your wits about you. Third, of course, being making sure that you have all the visa stuff worked out. Making sure that when you're going into a country and the customs agent asks you, okay, well, how long are you going to be staying here? And you say, oh, I'm going to be staying here 18 months on a tourist visa. Well, that's obviously going to get them to be a little bit suspicious. Ensuring that you have all the proper legal documentation figured out with you and ready to go when you're actually getting into the country increases the odds that, first of all, that you're going to actually get into the country, but second, and most important of all, you're going to actually be able to stay in the country and work in the country so you can sustain yourself in your digital nomad lifestyle. At the end of the day, realizing that everything that you're going to be doing as a digital nomad isn't just going to be the touristy stuff, going to fancy restaurants, going to the touristy places. Much of it is going to be work. But if you have the stomach for it and you can successfully sustain yourself, well, you get access to experiences traveling as a remote worker that many people don't get to experience in their typical 9 to 5. You just have to do it right, have a strategic plan, and make sure you've got everything figured out. At the end of the day, of course, this is not to discourage you from becoming a digital nomad if that's the lifestyle you're looking to pursue. But again, making sure you have realistic expectations about what life is going to be like. You got to understand that this life is not without its faults, and it will have its challenges. But if you can successfully manage them, getting paid somewhere that you are getting paid and having a lower cost of living, well, it could be rewarding experiences. You can meet new people, have new adventures, and it could be one of the most rewarding experiences that you have in your life and create memories that you will not soon forget. So, as always, thank you so much for watching. My name is Josh Mountain. Let me know down in the comments below what type of country you're going to go to, what type of trip you're thinking of doing. I'm always curious to hear about other people's stories, and I will see you in the next one.